Thank you. Oh. All right, looks like we're all here. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us via live or on video for this special board meeting, Thursday, February 18th, 2021. Tonight we have two agenda items. We'll be approving the potentially approving the Right at School childcare program and looking at COVID-19 testing transport relevant to reopening. And then Dr. Sills will share an update on the TK-5 reopening. So may I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
You have a
Motion.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Wendy, take the vote, please.
You're on mute, Wendy. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
All right. Dr. Dougal, perhaps we could ask you for the honors of the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Can we all stand, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
and to the
republic
Republic
for
for
which it stands,
stands
one nation, under God,
Indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Dr. D. Wendy, do we have any comments from the public this evening?
I do not have any comments from the public this evening.
All right. Well, dispensing with our normal practice, we will simply hear from the superintendent tonight. So Dr. Silvers, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. I'll share my screen. Okay. So just a update on reopening for in-person learning today. Wanted to just keep sort of going with the process, knowing that we're still in the widespread tier here in the purple, but we're moving very closely towards red. We're moving quickly, sorry, towards red.
Can you make it a little bigger, Blake? Sorry, before you go
Yeah,
too much farther.
sure. May have to let me exit. How's it?
Nope, wrong thing.
Oh, okay, then I'm gonna stop sharing.
I'm sorry.
I don't know what I just did. Give me 1 second.
I'm sorry, everybody.
I'll try this again. Let's see how this.
Oh, much better.
Is that better?
Was.
How's that, Joanne?
No, because now we can see all the slides to the side. Can you make it in presentation mode?
I will. Let me try and let me see. I just want to. Is that any better?
I think so. Yes.
So
Oh, yes,
I'll
thank you.
Okay. So I'll just skip through this here and move into last week. I just want to keep giving the comparisons from the week prior to the current week. And so we saw an adjusted case rate last board meeting, which was last week actually, of a 31.7 adjusted case rate. As we were moving closer to that 25 per 100,000, the LA County Department of Health, California Department of Health has indicated would be the mark in which we could bring students back. Here we see a 9.5% positivity rate, it's a 7-day average. And then we fast forward to yesterday or Tuesday, and we see a 20.0, so below the 25 adjusted case rate, and a 7.2% positivity rate, which actually is in the substantial tier. So definitely starting to see some real positive metrics positive metrics as we start bringing down our case rates and our positivity rates. And just again, from a sort of a visual here, just added those numbers to the end of this graph that we've sort of been tracking at this since mid-October. We see the case rates that continue to decline at a pretty rapid rate here on the right after that spike we saw in mid-November and December. And also seeing in the red, we're seeing our positivity rate that's also declining. And just for reference, I actually did change this dot here. This dot is essentially that 7%, which are under 7 cases per 100. So we want these two lines, we want this red line to continue in that direction, and we want this blue line to end up meeting this gray dot. So, I mean, just for visual, we are starting to move pretty quickly towards that number. And the reason why that's important is because, as I clarified last time, thanks to Ms. Caneta, was to be very clear that TK to 5 is the only are the only grade levels that are eligible to reopen right now. It is TK to 6 across the state, but I do have to say this morning, the LA Department of Public Health did clarify that 6th grade cannot reopen if it's in a single subject or what we would call a secondary model. So there are a lot of school districts across the state of California, probably the country, where they have TK to 6 that are on the same site in a self-contained classroom, limited cohort. So you can limit your cohort sizes or mitigate risk through cohort sizes. It just doesn't work in a secondary environment. So the middle school being in a single subject where students rotate class to class, period to period, it just doesn't work. So that dot here, this gray dot would be when LA County could open up schooling to the entire TK to 12 potentially. In our district, the TK to 8 for our TK to 8 would be at that point. So just wanted to clarify that and say we're still operating within the realm of being able to open TK to 5. So just a couple metrics that we have recommended to the board is that we would potentially bring our students back at or below 25 per 100,000. Again, that was the recommendation from the LA Department of Public Health or California Department of Health, and that we continue to look at our hospital capacity rates as well. And so we'd encourage the board to consider reopening schools for in-person learning no earlier than March 8th, 2020. And that would be for TK to 5, again, just to stress that TK to 5 only. And so just a few considerations as we go into this would be that we plan and execute the reopening of in-person general education instruction. Bullet point 1 would be March 8th of 2021, grades TK to 2. That would impact Anza and Cabrillo. And then just a week later that we would plan and execute the reopening of our grades 3 through 5, 138th Street and Anza, to give ourselves a week to be able to monitor, prepare, analyze all the logistics that are involved in bringing students back to our campuses for the first time in almost a year. Actually, at the 15th, we'd be at over a year, basically. So just wanting to bring that as a consideration to the board for discussion. And then that we consider the planning and executing of an enhanced small group cohorts for grades 6 to 8. To be determined, I just put that in parentheses. And the reason we don't have a date to that, while we'd like to consider that in mid-March, early to mid-March as well, is that the 6th grade was working or the middle school staff was working very hard on creating a schedule for a hybrid model. So that a lot of the time that was spent over the last couple of weeks was trying to design a plan that limited cohort sizes, but still maintain the integrity of their secondary program, period to period and subject to subject. Obviously, then that was sort of the rug was pulled out from underneath us with the announcement, or the clarification, I should say, by the LA County Department of Public Health. So, sort of going back to a term that we used in March, Nelson and Neil, Dr. Goldman, I know we were part of the RAP committee, but we were discussing distance learning plus, and so looking at our grades 6 through 8, that would be bringing students back. They're still in distance learning, but then bringing them back for any additive purposes. So how can we support students who may be at risk, our at promise youth who may need some enrichment activities, social emotional support, that we'd be able to find some really, I would just say some robust ways or more robust ways to bring students back to school in grades 6 through 8 too, through these specialized services. and to have an increased presence of teachers on campus to help support these small group cohorts and specialized services. So also want to point out, and I think Dr. Harbeck may comment on this too, but I did want to share with the board that we have a reopening guide. This was sent to parents today. So just so the board knows, we do have this guide for families. This is a living document, and so I won't scroll through it in its entirety, but there's, I believe, 17 pages of this document that are a pretty comprehensive look at how we would reopen and what parents may want to know prior to coming back to school from safety protocols. You can see here in the we have what they should know before returning to school, or schedule options, daily practices, symptoms checking, all of those things that would be important to bringing students back to school. So Eileen, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Oh, I certainly, thank you, Dr. Silvers. We were fortunate today to be able to send out a survey to our TK through 5th grade parents regarding their interest in either staying as a remote learning family or having their students come back in a hybrid on-campus model. So the survey went out today in English and in Spanish to our TK through 5 families. It had links to this reopening guide that Dr. Silvers is sharing with you, and also to what we called the learning program options, which just had a little more detail about the options families could consider for either remote or full distance learning. We are having those translated separately, taking a little bit more time with those, but those should be out soon.
Okay, and that's all. That's just this is the considerations for the board today, that we are moving forward with a TK to 2 opening. I think the big keys here is that it is a staggered approach to reopening, that we would sort of phase it in with our youngest learners first, and then 3 through 5 second. And I share that because what we've seen locally in districts around us is that's how they've opened. They've started with their youngest learners, and that seemed to be the most effective way to do it. So just would encourage that as a consideration. Open up to any questions. I can stop sharing my screen unless there's any questions about this particular presentation.
I want to raise a question that we might want to discuss as part of this slide. So if you leave it up for a second, Blake. I know one of the concerns that I've heard is that these dates interfere with some of the calendar events that we have on the school calendars for the way we had originally defined the school year. And I wonder if Eileen or you want to talk about some of the changes we might be able to make to accommodate these dates, and either within or adjusting the calendar as necessary to accommodate the dates here.
Sure. I may open that to Eileen or Nisha. I don't know if the two of you want to talk about some of the options.
Right. Well, thank you, Dr. Silvers. One of the things that has come up is that we do have we're on a quarter system. That means we have 4 quarters. And we've completed 2 quarters our first semester, and we're in the middle of our 3rd quarter. So by bringing students back, we would have to, of course, move some students around. So if a student chooses to stay distant and another student in the same class plans to be hybrid, we'd have to make some decisions about that. And grades and attendance are affected in the Power School system. It's a little bit complicated, but the way you move students around into different classes, we don't want to lose any of that data. So in order to preserve all that data and still move students into their correct cohorts or classes, we would have to consider moving or shortening our 3rd quarter to meet this deadline, and then extending or making longer our 4th quarter. And the rules on this really are up to us. We can shorten or lengthen any quarter we like. The rule is how many days we're in school, of course, overall in a school year. So we can determine our own dates with quarters. So we are looking at shortening that 3rd quarter and extending the 4th quarter so that grades and attendance are preserved. And we can do that. It does take some back of the house work on our part, but we feel like we would involve enough personnel to do this and we could handle it.
Thank you. I think that's really important to build on the work that's already been done in distance learning, and to congratulate the students for the work they've accomplished, and the teaching staff, of course, for the good work they've done, and to make sure that everybody is recognized for that work to the point in time where they may have to make changes in how they're learning. and families will make these decisions. Thank you. I think that's a really important clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I could ask a question too, Dr. Harbeck, I believe there were some parent-teacher conferences later in the month as well that maybe we could look at. What are
We
your
certainly
thoughts?
can. We certainly can. I think that one of those, it's a very important concern for all of us so that, we don't, those actual conferences were scheduled later in March. They typically fall that time of year. So we are going to relook at that.
And Dr. Harbeck, just as a follow-up to that, we're not, just so I'm clear, we're not canceling parent-teacher conferences. We're just delaying those, correct?
We would look at a delay or what we call just a postponement of those, maybe to the end of the year. We'd have to work with our staff to find out what would work best, our principals.
So the end of the year, at that point, the school year is over. So
toward the end of the year, we have another school in the district that pushes toward the end of the year so that there's a wrap up, and we look at how students have done a retrospective. So we might be looking at how students have done overall. I just want to point out that our teachers confer with parents on a regular basis. We do not wait for conferences in Weisburg. Our communication with parents is regular, and it's in varied ways. So the conferences are always important, and we don't ever want to lose that in our district, but the conferring or talking or communicating with our parents is primary, and it goes on regularly through our course of our education with our students.
Okay. So I think to that point, with we wanted to prioritize bringing students back, those students that want to come back, and figuring out a way to navigate the sort of the challenges or obstacles that would, impede that. One of those being conferences and maybe changing the way conferences look. The other would be certainly taking a look at the quarter date and maybe ending the quarter, 2 weeks early or 2.5 weeks early, 3 weeks early, whatever that adds up to be, so that we can then hit this March 8th date, start fresh, and have students back on campuses.
I think another thing that is important, in addition to the curriculum and instruction, which of course is the main event that we're talking about here, the complementary part to that, because of COVID, is all the safety implementations that need to be done as well within the classroom, in terms of the teachers learning, what the protocol needs to look like for safety, the students learning, the parents learning, and so on. So do you have any part of the presentation with that, or should we talk about that a little bit in terms of encouraging everyone to know the preparation that's being done and that's intended to be done by these dates?
Sure. Nisha, do you want to take that? I can add to it, but do you want to just start with that?
Sure. So as we've stated before, is LA Department of Public Health has visited our sites. And so we are fully operational and ready to open in terms of all the safety protocols and mitigation protocols put in place to stop the spread of COVID. We have PPE on all of our sites, and this equipment deals with everything from surgical masks to fabric masks to face shields for students and staff to use. And we have learned with our youngest learners, we've gotten additional supplies of extenders for masks or things to keep things in place for them, offering different variations of masks. And so things that have like a gaiter on the neck and then a face shield, and so it doesn't really touch the students' faces. And so we have been looking at different masks, and so we have a kind of a plethora or variety of masks available. In terms of cleaning and sanitizing, we have all of our custodial staff is trained on the different cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting mechanisms that we have in place. And for them, we also have additional PPE, which includes goggles, coveralls, additional gloves and such that they would need. And so we are preparing in terms of just ensuring that everyone's aware of what the safety protocols are when they return. For instance, the new health screening process that would happen. We are also going to be starting testing of students and staff, not mandatory, but we will have testing on our sites twice a week for those interested staff members and students that would want to get tested. As well as a new symptom screener that parents and staff will be filling out before returning on campus. And so each day they would be getting kind of a certification that they can return on campus, and their temperature will be checked once they do to get onto campus. And so all those things, I know it seems like it's a lot of behind the scenes work, but we are ready for students to come back. We are preparing for them to come back and putting some final touches in terms of, how does dismissal work, how do students come onto campus? And so we're working on all the logistics, but we do have all of our safety protocols in place, as well as all of our safety equipment available.
That's a really important, thank you. That's a very thorough description. And I think, I don't know how we're communicating this preparedness to our families, but I think it's got to be a big factor in their decision about coming back to the classroom as opposed to distance learning. So I guess, have we communicated this to the community?
So a couple things. We hope our district reopening guide is, the first step in having our families realize what we will be doing in terms of the safety protocols that will be in place. We are also working on scheduling meetings at the site level for principals to host with families, so that it's site specific and personalized per grade level on what it would look like for their return. And so we will be sending out communication on a weekly basis to our community and to our families in terms of what that would look like for them.
Good, thank you. I have another question.
Joanne, can I just add one more thing to that?
Sure.
I'm sorry. And we actually are working on a video as much as, I don't know, but the visual part of it would be good too, where we hopefully can have, and again, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but we are looking at a video and putting together so that families can actually see what the process would be like, and where the script is pretty much done, and we just need to execute the video, and that should be
great. Good, thank you.
Let me also.
Dr. Nisha, sorry, Dr. Dugal and Dr. Harbeck, question for you. I heard the first step in communicating this to parents is the district reopening guide. It's obviously only in English at this point in time. Can we commit to like Tuesday or Wednesday? Because I heard it'd be available soon, but I'd like to, there's so much information in a 17-page document that if some of our families aren't seeing it, I'd like to give at least a target date if we can. The sooner the better, of course, so that they get that. And Dr. Silvers, as well as in that video, I would imagine if we're going to be putting that out, that there's going to be a Spanish translation for that as well. I know that takes a little bit longer in terms of time, but we have to do it. That's something that I know it's in front of your minds as well. And time constraints being what they are with everything that we're trying to accomplish. But if we could work on trying to provide a target date so that at least parents can also know kind of when to expect that, I think that'd be really important.
Okay, and I'm happy to commit. We'll try and commit to how about Wednesday? Just because of the weekend and tomorrow's Friday, just give us a little bit more time. I know these things do take time. We want to make sure the translations are correct.
Okay, sounds like a
plan. Are accurate. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Also, I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Silvers, Mr. Paredes, Ms. Masterson at ANZA, and Ms. Wilberg and Ms. Williams at Cabrillo. Nelson and I, thank you, Nelson. We visited both these schools. I was impressed with the thinking in preparation, all the efforts that are being made, and all the thinking that's going into keeping people safe. There were a couple things for the parents that I thought were essential that they hear. One is that the traditional ways of coming to school and drop off will be changing. So you got to keep your eyes out for that there will be more communication on this. So just don't assume what you've done before will be exactly the same. And another thing that was brought up was, I believe, Dr. Silvers, the conversation about potentially an information session or two or more from the principals about the school sites, because the video you're talking about is district-wide, but I think parents will have questions at each individual site.
Yeah, so that would go, the principals would each host their own, probably a couple. We've talked about doing a couple days, nights, maybe one in the morning, so that there's a sort of staggered times for families just to honor their time, where they can, it's an introduction, a welcome back. I think there's a lot of kind of hope and positivity about bringing kids back to school, but also certainly pointing out those important aspects of safety and the protocols, drop off, pickup, and all of those things.
I think they referred to them as town hall meetings. They're planning town hall meetings, I think, with the grade levels. So I think that will be very important, and to the point that Joanne made in terms of the communication.
Yeah, Nelson, you bring up a good point. You bring up grade levels. I know that the principals had talked about being at least grade level or grade level span specific, so that, you know, because it will look different for our fifth graders and it will for our kinders. And so we want to make sure that we tailor it so that those experiences for families are personal.
Are we gonna, will those town hall meetings include ways that the parents can help prepare their students at home for coming back to school in this way? I would suggest that that be a very specific topic and that we might be able to put together some bullet points, not another 17-page document, maybe a page that would have some bullet points on it for parents that would offer them some suggestions for how to prepare their students.
So Joanne, I think that's a great point because in our site visit today at Cabrillo, both Lisa and Jen mentioned that they're starting to do that already. For example, the students it's a virtual learning right now, but they have the students wearing masks, for example, because that is what they're going to be doing when they come back. So they've started that. So to your point, I think, yeah, they're working on that.
Great. I think that's great. And I think the more we can do, we have to remember we have to communicate with the parents, but we also need to communicate with the kids so that their expectations are set for what their school day is going to look like.
Dr. Dougal, I know you wanted to comment here. Please do.
And just on another level, our counselors and our psychologists are also working on kind of a return for what social emotionally what it's going to be like for students. So I know that we've talked a lot about safety, and it's exciting to hear that teachers and students are practicing wearing their masks, but there's also just a mindset shift that students will be making. And so our care team, our counselors, as well as our psychologists are working hard on additional parent resources to help those students transition back to in-person learning.
So, some of the things we've heard, and we heard it tonight with some teachers before this meeting, but also reading and so on, is you know, how there's always this separation anxiety we think about with kindergartners when they start school. Things are a little different now. A lot of kids come from working families and so on, where the separation anxiety may be less or different. But now we're going to have separation anxiety all the way from TK to 5. So that's a challenge. And I don't know, I hope we're preparing our teaching staff and so on to, because fifth grade, you know, the fifth grade's probably not really too worried about separation anxiety on a normal basis, but this is different. So anyway, I'm very proud of all the planning that has gone into this. Congratulations to everyone. And it's huge. And I respect the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you. A question for, I don't know if it's Dr. Silvers or Harbeck, relative to the survey from parents. Obviously, they went out today. I'm sure we're starting to get some back in. When do we expect, from our experience in the past, when do we expect to get them back? I'm assuming we'll have some feedback or insights by our next board meeting, which is a week from today.
You will. We actually are doing a daily run to see where we're at, to get some pre-information. We're asking parents to finish by Monday. We'll be sending out reminders. It's a tight timeline, we know, but it gives us the ability to appropriately tie in students to the right schedules and rearrange our teachers. And also we've got to move around our technology programs that students are now using to make sure that they're aligned. So there's a little bit of work behind it. We want to make sure we really appreciate parents taking time to do that before Monday. They'll be getting reminders if they haven't gotten to it yet.
You know, Eileen, and you bring up a good point. Maybe we should stress this here too, is that returning to school, as we said, won't look the same as it was, you know, prior to COVID, obviously, and it won't look the same as it did when we started in September, late August and September. So there will have to be shuffling of students and teachers. We want to provide an opportunity for those families that want to choose to stay at home to have that choice. And we'll have teachers doing distance learning teaching, and then we'll have those that will be in person. And so there will, you know, unfortunately, as much as we want to maintain continuity, some of the unintended consequences of us coming back in the midst of a pandemic, you know, it will be the shifting of students and their teachers. And so I just want to make that say that up front and share with families. It is, we understand that this is a completely imperfect science, to try and bring these students back at this time, but we're committed to doing it and try and disrupt as little as possible, but there will be some disruption.
And we probably should again state that parents and students will have the choice whether or not to return. Just to again get that out there, that this is return to school does not mean everybody has to come back. You have the choice. Any other questions or comments from the board or further comments from the cabinet relative to Dr. Silver's presentation?
So Blake, the presentation said no sooner than the 8th. Are we letting people, are we committing to that date? I'm a little not sure we've actually said that in this meeting.
Yeah, so I put it as a consideration because I wanted to open it up to the board. I think our recommendation from the district would be that we open TK to 2 on the 8th and march forward with that. Wanted to leave that to that's our recommendation, and that the 15th would be 3 to 5. And so unless there's any opposition to that or any desire for us to extend that out, we'd move forward with those dates. And we would message that out to families as well, in English and Spanish.
Board comments?
Like, you have my support for those dates. Thank you.
Yeah, you have my support as well with a lot of the discussion this evening. The dates work with some of the perhaps calendar changes, as well as the conference adjustments and so on, to make sure that we don't lose any of the valuable work that's going on and the conferencing and so on, and that we are able to bring kids back to school without complications of those types. And with the safety protocols and the safety work that's already been done, and the work that I know the staff has done with teachers and parents to understand what this all looks like, you definitely have my support as well.
On my end, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Silvers, and all of our staff for working so hard on this process. I know it's not easy. There's just so many different variables to consider as we move forward. I do like the dates, and I'm in support of the staggered start for the 8th and on the 15th as well. I understand the 3 through 5 combination with ANZA, given that that's TK5. So I think it's also a better approach to group 138th Street together, with the 3-5 for ANZA. So all grades 3-5 start at the same time, even though 138th is in its own completely separate site. Theoretically, we could start earlier on over at 138th, but I'd like, for consistency in messaging as well, that all 3 to 5 start at the same time. I think that's also prudent to have a unifying message with regards to communication to parents and students. TK2 starts on the 8th and 3 through 5 starts on the 15th. So you have my support for that as well.
Mr. Martinez, did you want to chime in?
Thank you, Neil. Absolutely. I also concur with the recommendation. I support the staggered schedule. I also want to take an opportunity to really thank Albert and Katie, Lisa, and Jen as well. I had an opportunity to visit the sites, as Dr. Goldman mentioned earlier, both ANZA and Cabrillo. I was very impressed with the site tour. I certainly appreciate the patience, and Neil asked a lot of questions. We both did, actually. So thank you. I know it was well thought out and a lot of work went into it. And so I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank really the administration and all the teachers and staff. A lot of work went into it. And we still have a few things to work out that I think we will do with regards to pick up and drop off and so forth. But thank you, everyone, for all the hard work, and definitely concur with the recommendation.
And thank you all. There are so many balancing factors here, and the push to open schools is significant. We've heard all the health issues from the kids. We're doing everything to mitigate the healthcare issues for the staff. And so I think, Blake, you have your marching orders. Further comment on this, or we'll move on?
It's amazing. I mean, it's congratulations. It's that we're actually being able to make this decision. I think an applause is in order. Thanks to everyone. That's crazy. It's awesome.
Here we go. All right, let's move on to the action items. General action item 5.1, ratify service agreement with Right at School. We have a motion, please.
I'll
You
motion.
have a motion.
Can I have a second then from one of you?
I can second.
Thank you, Joanne. First, Israel, second, Joanne. Thank you. A special thanks before we vote here to Roger for taking really diligent time to review this contract, and appreciate the vetting service that you did, Blake, with our team to do this quickly. And any other comments or questions here?
I would just add, Roger, I thank you. I would concur with Dr. Goldman. I want to share to Roger and Neil, you too. I mean, you both spent quite a bit of time reviewing that contract and asking good questions, and not to go back, but to go back to Nelson and Neil walking around the campuses. It was very instructive. I think the questions that you asked were meaningful and supportive and helpful. So wanted to share that too. I was going to say that later, but I figured Roger, thank you for that. Looking forward to working with the team to put this together as soon as we can.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And as well, Neil, thank you as well. You did a thorough vetting of that contract as well. So thank you for your time spent there as well. A couple of just very quick comments with regards to the. I think it's one more step, if you will, to trying to return to as normal as possible, and providing those services within the district that our parents have also been asking for and need, and really to serve our students. I think it was a wonderful idea to look at that and look at options. So again, thank you to the staff that did the research, and really looking forward to the program, and it'll get started, and we'll always look for areas to potentially improve, as we do with everything. So I'm really looking forward to providing this as a service to our community as well, and looking forward to the partnership. So thank you again.
Do we know when the service might start? Like, do we have a time frame?
So we'll sign this document tonight, assuming there's approval, and they are waiting for that approval. So we will try and forward that over tonight before we leave. But I just want to say to Roger's point, I think Nelson and Dr. Goldman, we talked about this earlier today, is that just for families that want and need childcare, this is also going to be sort of the imperfect part of us starting school up, and under the circumstances that we have now with CDC guidelines, the Right at School and any childcare program offering is going to have to follow those same protocols. And so, while we want to, at the end of the day, have a goal of no wait list, there may be some wait lists up front with a goal that we would absolutely limit or hopefully eliminate at one point the wait list, but it just won't be immediate. I don't expect it to be immediate. Hopefully it is, but we don't expect it.
The COVID-19 protocols have dramatically reduced our capacity, and that's just our reality, unfortunately, because of the number of kids we can have in each school and classroom. With that said, Wendy, let's take it to a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Moving on to 5.2, ratify the agreement with Mobilemed Work Health Solutions, Inc. This is COVID-19 testing transport. Who can tell us a little bit more about this, please?
I can't. Do you need to vote on it or open it
We
up?
need to
I
motion
need
it.
a motion. Yes, sorry, I need a motion. Thank
have
you.
a motion?
Oh, Nelson did. That's fine.
And a second?
Joanne.
Second.
There we go. Thank you, Dr. Dugal. Please give us some background here.
Perfect. So as I mentioned earlier, in regards to some of our safety protocols, is that we will have testing available for our staff and students twice a week. And this courier service is actually going to be a locked box, a secure box that is placed at our testing site. And the courier service will pick it up each night that we do testing. So there is a charge for that. The testing is free, but we are paying for the courier service to pick up the test samples and get us the results within 24 to 36 hours.
And in my understanding, we're actually working on a way to even reduce those costs moving forward.
Absolutely, yes.
And the results will be delivered online. That's a separate part of what we're talking about, of course.
So there's actually 3 different entities working together to get testing going for us. So there's the actual test kits, There is a digital platform we use, and then there's this courier service. So all three entities got to mesh to get our testing going.
Well, and as I understand it, the irony here is that it's either the county or the state is paying for the testing, but not the transport.
Correct.
Detail. So the transport's on us, but
Yes.
we do have COVID funds, so good use. Let's
I
take.
hope Dave, is Dave shaking his head? We do have COVID funds, right? Okay, good. Thank you, Dave.
Dave said it. We're good. All right, Wendy, let's take this one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Dr. Silvers, are there any other matters for dialogue this evening?
I have nothing else, Dr. Goldman.
I do not think we need another closed. So with that said, and no other agenda items to discuss, I will officially close this meeting at 6:42 p.m. and wish everybody a great night. Be well, everybody.
Night.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
To adjourn.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, I'll just, sorry, Wendy. Actually, no, we don't need to do that. With no further agenda, I can simply close the meeting. So let's do a
Okay.
vote now. We'll debate it next time. Go for it, Wendy.
Okay.
You need a motion to adjourn?
I've moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed?
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Be well.
Good night.